I'm going to begin in good rabbinic fashion with a joke. It's an old one and one that's been forgotten because it was from the founding of the State of Israel. It was a joke that was current during the War of Independence, where these kibbutz had to have shomrim, they had to have guards that would guard the perimeter of the kibbutz night by night, but they had no weapons. So Shmuel was given a broom. And he was told, look, if you walk around and you point it at night, it'll look like a gun and everything should be okay. Just be threatening. So one night he's walking around with his broom and he hears some rustling in the woods and he says, whoever that is, come out or I'll shoot. Gradually, Yossi comes out and Shmuel looks at him and goes, Yossi, what are you crazy? I could have killed you. Yossi says, not with that. I'm a tank. And I tell you this because it is sometimes hard, as much as we talk about it, to recapture the original vulnerability of the nascent, tiny state. So let me take you back a few more years so that we can understand even better how we were born. In 1903, in the town of Kishinev, a Russian child was murdered by a relative, as it proved, but it did not stop the locals from rioting and killing Jews. And scores of Jews were killed, and more were injured, and 700 homes were looted and burned, so much so that Theodore Roosevelt, the president at the time, appealed to the Tsar without any result. The New York Times covered it and said the streets of Kishinev are running with Jewish blood. 2 years later, there was another pogrom in the same town of Kishinev, which was now almost completely bereft of Jews. And in 1905, after the second pogrom, came the Seventh Zionist Congress. And the British, under Chamberlain, came to the Congress and they said, please, take the Uganda plan. We have this territory. You can go there today. You'll be safe. We'll worry about getting you to Israel later, but for now you have to save your lives. Go there. There's no one there that will oppose you. We can give it to you and you'll be all right. And sitting in 2012 in Los Angeles, it is hard to remember what that meant. But maybe you'll understand it when I tell you that the leader of the Russian Zionists, named Kishinev, when he heard about the Uganda plan at the Zionist Congress, stood up and said, Shehechianu, because he was afraid that Russian Jewry would be killed. And Herzl, who was afraid that European Jewry would be destroyed, that prophetic fear, Herzl supported the Uganda plan. And Weitzman writes in his autobiography, the plan was brought to the floor, Weitzman's own father voted yes. Then Weitzman voted no, and then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the 2 delegates left from Kishinev, where there were no Jews left, whose relatives had been killed, whose homes had been burned, and they said, will you accept it? And they said no. And at that moment, said Weitzman, Herzl came up to me and said, I don't understand. The rope is around their necks, and still they say no. At which point Weitzman said, the rope is still around our necks, and we still say no. And part of what I want to reiterate to you this morning, this afternoon, is you hear over and over again, Iran and nuclear, but let me give it to you in the metaphors of our tradition. Someone else is winding a rope. And they're readying it for Jewish necks. And we still say no. And that's what this conference is really about. That's why we are really here. We're here because, once again, that's what we have to say to the world. The Israeli poet Amir Gilboa put all of Jewish history in 3 lines. He said, if they show me a stone and I say it's a stone, they'll agree it's a stone. If they show me a tree and I say that's a tree, they'll agree it's a tree. But if they show me my blood and I say it's blood, they'll say it's color. For thousands of years, Jewish blood wasn't blood to the world, it was color. And part of the affirmation that we make and the influence that we wield and the plea that we give to the world is that same no, that Jewish blood will no longer be color. That's why we have a state of Israel. That's why we have a resurgent American Jewish community, because Jewish blood matters for the first time in thousands of years, and it will never be color again. Weitzman understood why it had to be the land of Israel. In a beautiful bit of testimony before the Peel Commission, one of the British commissioners said to him, "What's the matter with you? Just take this land. You'll be fine, you'll be safe." And Weitzman said, "Look, that's like my asking you, why did you drive 50 kilometers to the country to visit your mother last week when there are so many other lovely old ladies on your street?" The point is, when it's yours, it's yours. Not that it's perfect. We actually don't gather here because we think Israel is without fault. You don't have to be perfect to be good. That's what we understand, and we know that the people who founded Israel, these stories that I've been telling you, they didn't come from democracies. How is it that all these people who came from totalitarian and authoritarian countries all of a sudden coalesced and created a democracy? It's miraculous. It's unbelievable. But they did. And that affinity of values that was born almost out of thin air and out of our own tradition, that's why we're here. That's the appeal we make to the world. There are Jews who criticize Israel. But any criticism of Israel must remember the following. My children don't patrol the borders. They don't have to dismantle unexploded rockets in the street. There are very few bomb shelters in Westwood. We have to know that there has to be a certain amount of diffidence, of modesty, of humility when we speak about our brothers and sisters in Israel whose children go off at night and they don't hear from them because they don't know where they are and they don't know what they're doing because they're not allowed to say. And all you can hope as a parent of a child in the Israeli Defense Forces is that he or she will be home in the morning. And unless you feel that fear, you have to be very careful what you say. Now, I know that on this day, over and over and over again, you've been hearing stories about Purim. So I want to tell you about Hanukkah. Enough Purim already. I want to tell you the story of the great British Rabbi Hugo Gryn, who, when he was a child in Auschwitz, stood next to his father when they received the precious margarine ration. And his father took it and used it to light the first Hanukkah candle. And Hugo, as a child, said to his father, "What's the matter with you? Don't you understand that that's food? We need food. You can't do this." And his father said to him, "Listen to me, my child. This is what we have learned. We have learned that you can go for 3 weeks without food. We've learned that you can go for 3 days without water, but that you cannot live for 3 minutes without hope." You and I both know that this is not the last threat that Israel will face. There will be another and another. We aren't here because we have to solve a single problem, although God knows we have to solve a single problem. We're here because we insist that the delegates of Kishinev were right, that Hugo Gryn's father was right, that Jewish history doesn't end. It doesn't end today. It doesn't end tomorrow, not next week, next month, next year, in the next 1,000 years. We're here because we are part of that eternal chain of hope. We're here because when we say Am Yisrael Chai, that the nation of Israel lives, we aren't only talking about the covenant of history. We're talking about the covenant of destiny. We're talking about far into the future because we understand what the delegates understood, what Grin's father understood, what Abraham understood, that we are on a journey not to a perfect place, but a promised place, and that it has been given to our hands to preserve it. And therefore, in the face of the world, in the face of the threat, in the face of those who would destroy us, we still say no. Am Yisrael Chai.